Imagine walking into a lively party or social event. The atmosphere buzzes with laughter, conversations, and the clinking of glasses. People are immersed in small talk, exchanging stories, and enjoying the evening. Amidst all this energy, one person stands alone in the corner. They're not avoiding anyone or staring at their phone. They're just observing, lost in thought. You might wonder, what's going on in their mind? Why do they choose to be alone, in a crowd? Is it because they're shy, uninterested, or uncomfortable? Or is there something deeper at play, something beyond the surface-level reasons we often associate with introversion or aloofness? Why do some people seem distant or disconnected in social settings? Could their quietness be a sign of something more profound? A different way of engaging with the world around them that social interactions can't fulfill? This is where the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer's ideas come into play. He proposed that some individuals prefer solitude not because they lack social skills or feel out of place, but because their intellectual and emotional lives are too complex to be expressed in shallow, casual conversations. These people are often absorbed in thoughts, theories, or reflections that don't easily fit into the flow of small talk. It's not that they don't care about the people around them. Their minds are simply captivated by concepts and ideas that are too significant or too abstract to discuss in a typical social setting. He believed that solitude for these individuals isn't about avoiding others, but about nurturing their thoughts and ideas. For them, solitude is not disconnection, but a deliberate choice to engage with their minds and souls in ways that social interactions simply can't facilitate. Let's explore why he saw this as an essential part of the intellectual life. For him, the intellectual life is a path to a richer, more meaningful existence. While most find joy in external interactions, those with a deep intellectual drive are often drawn inward. They crave meaningful ideas and philosophical questions, which can't be found in the superficial conversations of social events. Their withdrawal is a reflection of their intense inner life, a life devoted to exploring and understanding the world on a deeper level. He didn't see solitude as loneliness, but as a form of self-awareness, a space for introspection and mental exploration. It's where they can clarify their thoughts, challenge assumptions, and refine their understanding of the world. Solitude, then, becomes a place for clarity. Rather than isolating themselves from others, these individuals are engaging with the world on their own terms. In solitude, they find the mental space to process, reflect, and digest information in ways that are impossible amidst the constant noise of social interactions. But what about the balance between social life and intellectual solitude? He didn't advocate for complete isolation. Social interactions, when meaningful, can still be enriching. He believed that while superficial conversations often hinder intellectual growth, intellectually stimulating discussions could provide the kind of connection that feeds the mind. Thus, it's not about rejecting social life entirely, but recognizing when it serves one's intellectual development. Some social gatherings can offer moments of mental stimulation, thought-provoking conversations that challenge the intellect. For the most part, however, the greatest satisfaction comes from solitary reflection. His philosophy teaches us that solitude isn't something to fear or avoid. It's a space where the mind can flourish. At the same time, meaningful social connections should not be dismissed. The relationships that engage the mind and challenge perspectives are valuable. True fulfillment doesn't come from mindlessly conforming to social expectations or filling the silence with empty chatter. It comes from knowing when to engage, when to withdraw, and finding meaning in both solitude and social life. 2. Schopenhauer's core argument. Arthur Schopenhauer's view on social life is shaped by his understanding of intellectual engagement. He argued that individuals with deeply developed minds, those immersed in complex thoughts and ideas, often find little value in typical social interactions. Conversations centered around shallow subjects like gossip, trends, or mundane personal stories don't appeal to those whose minds are engaged in more profound considerations. For people focused on intellectual inquiry, these everyday exchanges can feel frustrating and draining. They often revolve around self-serving topics: who did what, who's dating whom, or the latest celebrity news. Though such subjects may interest many, they don't challenge the intellect. Instead, they serve to reinforce the ego, with each person trying to assert their status or impress others. This kind of interaction is driven by a need for validation and approval, reflecting a desire to affirm one's place in the world. However, for the intellectually inclined, this constant need for validation is unattractive. Schopenhauer argued that the intelligent mind doesn't seek praise nor derive satisfaction from socializing for appearances. In fact, these trivial exchanges can feel counterproductive, offering little more than a fleeting distraction from the pursuit of deeper knowledge. While some may enjoy the affirmation these interactions provide, the intellectually driven find them lacking. What truly matters is the opportunity to engage in conversations that challenge assumptions and open new avenues of thought. Intellectual nourishment, gained through dialogues about philosophy, science, history, and art, holds far more appeal than discussing the latest trends or celebrity gossip. Schopenhauer's philosophy doesn't equate intellectual curiosity with antisocial behavior. It's not about rejecting relationships, but prioritizing intellectual needs over social norms. Social interaction is necessary, but for the intellectually curious, it should serve a meaningful purpose. The pursuit of knowledge, clarity, and insight outweighs fulfilling social obligations or performing for an audience. When given a choice, these individuals are more likely to seek solitude or engage in carefully selected social interactions that promise intellectual stimulation rather than emotional validation. In a world where most conversations focus on trivial matters, Schopenhauer's argument reminds us that intellectual depth often conflicts with typical social environments. The more one becomes intellectually engaged, the less likely they are to be satisfied with shallow exchanges. He challenges the assumption that social life is essential for happiness. For some, happiness is found not in the validation of others, but in the fulfilling satisfaction of intellectual discovery. Thus, intellectual curiosity drives these individuals to choose solitude or select conversations that feed their mind, sharpen their understanding, and contribute to their personal and intellectual growth. 3. Historical examples. Schopenhauer's idea of intellectual detachment isn't just a philosophical concept. It's reflected in the lives of brilliant minds throughout history. Take Isaac Newton, for instance. As one of the most influential figures in science, Newton's contributions to classical physics and mathematics changed the course of history. Yet, his genius came at a personal cost. His intense focus on his work led him to deliberately avoid social interactions. For Newton, knowledge required solitude. His mind needed space free from the distractions of everyday life. This wasn't a matter of personal preference. It was essential for his intellectual growth. In Schopenhauer's view, Newton's brilliance came from his ability to block out the noise and immerse himself fully in his experiments. Trivial conversations and social obligations would have hindered his deep thinking. Schopenhauer's belief that intellectuals retreat from society, not because they are antisocial, but because they need an environment where they can focus without distractions. Similarly, Schopenhauer, the philosopher who championed these ideas, practiced what he preached. His life was marked by self-imposed isolation, not due to shyness, but because he believed the distractions of the social world hindered philosophical progress. Schopenhauer famously critiqued the superficiality of social interactions, which he saw as obstacles to deep thought. For Schopenhauer, society's distractions weren't just bothersome, they were a barrier to intellectual growth. Schopenhauer would spend his days reading, writing, and reflecting in solitude, embracing quiet moments where he could contemplate life's deeper questions. His life reflects his belief that intellectuals must distance themselves from the constant chatter of social life to make room for profound thinking. Isolation for him was not an escape, but a necessary condition for true philosophical exploration. Both Newton and Schopenhauer offer a striking contrast to traditional views on social engagement. While many find joy in socializing, these great minds derive their fulfillment from intellectual pursuits, not just for the sake of knowledge, but to understand existence. For them, the call of the mind was stronger than the pull of society. Their stories challenge our perceptions of social interaction. For them, socializing wasn't a priority, nor was it essential for a fulfilled life. Driven by a passion for knowledge, they chose solitude to cultivate their minds. Their detachment was a conscious decision to prioritize intellectual growth over societal expectations. These lives remind us that while many thrive in social environments, some find their greatest fulfillment in solitude, where their intellect can roam freely. 4. Psychological impact. For deeply intellectual minds, socializing can feel draining, not because they dislike people or are antisocial, but because many social interactions fail to meet their intellectual needs. The mental energy spent in these conversations often outweighs any satisfaction derived from them. Instead of feeling enriched, individuals with a strong intellectual drive often feel mentally exhausted as they long for more than the superficial exchanges that dominate most social settings. It's not the presence of others that tires them, it's the absence of meaningful dialogue. Schopenhauer acknowledged this disconnect in his exploration of the human condition. Many social interactions are driven by ego validation rather than genuine intellectual engagement. People often converse not to explore ideas or share knowledge, but to affirm their own self-worth. Whether it's boasting about achievements, fishing for compliments, or seeking approval, these exchanges focus on reinforcing individual identities instead of offering real substance or intellectual challenge. This dynamic becomes even clearer with repeated shallow interactions, leaving little room for novelty or meaningful dialogue. For the intellectual mind, these interactions can feel like a mental dead end, more about performance than connection. These shallow exchanges, while harmless, offer no mental stimulation or enrichment. The intellectual mind craves conversations that spark curiosity, challenge assumptions, and inspire new ways of thinking. Gossip or mundane discussions don't serve the purpose of intellectual growth. To someone passionate about knowledge, these conversations can feel more like distractions than fulfilling connections. What they seek is a conversation that sparks new ideas, challenges their beliefs, and broadens their horizons. When this mental stimulation is lacking, individuals may withdraw from social situations. But this withdrawal isn't about avoiding others, it's a search for something more meaningful. The intellectual mind is selective, preferring conversations that offer depth and encourage growth. Schopenhauer suggests that the desire for solitude is not about rejecting people, but about pursuing something richer. Intellectuals engage with ideas through reading, writing, or contemplation, because these activities provide the stimulation they crave. Choosing solitude is often a way for intellectuals to protect their mental energy and focus on what nourishes their minds. Solitude in this context isn't to be feared. It's a deliberate choice to recharge and engage with what truly matters. While society often values extroversion, Schopenhauer emphasizes the rewards of solitude for the intellectual. Social interaction may feel like an obstacle to deeper engagement, leaving intellectuals seeking more meaningful pursuits. In a world where extroversion is often linked to success or happiness, the intellectual's detachment may be misunderstood as social incompetence. But Schopenhauer offers a different perspective. Withdrawal is a conscious effort to protect mental well-being and create space for personal growth. 5. The conformity trap. In social settings, unspoken rules govern how people behave. These guidelines, often not written or discussed, shape our tone, topics, and expectations. While these rules help maintain harmony and structure, they can feel restrictive for those who crave deeper, more meaningful engagement. What seems like natural conversation can feel like a scripted performance for those yearning for deeper engagement. Schopenhauer understood this subtle force, the pressure to conform. This expectation often suffocates intellectually curious minds. Instead of diving into complex discussions, they're trapped in cycles of small talk, the latest trends, weather updates, or viral news, topics that reinforce social norms and prevent real intellectual exchange. What's perceived as social interaction often becomes a routine dance to fit in, rather than a genuine exchange of ideas. For intellectuals, these interactions feel empty. They don't spark curiosity or challenge assumptions. Instead of discussing big ideas, social talk revolves around the trivial. Over time, these repetitive exchanges become draining as they fail to ignite creative thinking or fuel meaningful dialogue. For the intellectual, these social exchanges fulfill societal expectations, not their intellectual desires. Schopenhauer critiqued this conformity, which stifles creativity and independent thought. The pressure to blend in creates an environment where intellectual exploration is sidelined. People repeat the same routines in the name of social harmony, limiting personal growth and intellectual development. The intellectual, who thrives on challenging assumptions, finds this cycle suffocating. The quest for validation, common in social interactions, also reinforces conformity. Schopenhauer argued that many conversations are driven by the need to bolster one's ego rather than explore new ideas. For intellectuals, fitting in becomes an obstacle to personal growth. They crave depth, authenticity, and meaningful engagement, but the social need for validation blocks it. In a world obsessed with fitting in, intellectuals often question the purpose of these exchanges. Intellectuals may feel isolated in social settings. While many are satisfied with shallow interactions, those with a deep intellectual drive often find themselves unfulfilled. Conversations rarely align with the ideas that matter most to them, leaving them feeling intellectually isolated, even in the presence of others. Solitude for Schopenhauer is about thinking freely and engaging with the complexities of life on one's own terms. In solitude, intellectuals experience a kind of freedom that's impossible within the confines of social norms. It's a space where ideas can develop organically, free from the pressures of fitting in. This intellectual autonomy is key to personal and intellectual growth. By rejecting conformity, the intellectual mind is free to explore ideas that would otherwise be stifled. This pursuit of intellectual freedom resonates with those who value independent thought. Schopenhauer believed that true growth requires the courage to challenge assumptions and to engage with knowledge beyond societal expectations. True intellectual growth comes not from following the crowd, but from embracing the courage to think independently, explore new ideas, and challenge the norms that restrict our understanding. In conclusion, Schopenhauer's critique highlights the struggles of those trapped in environments that prioritize surface-level interactions. Through solitude and independent thought, intellectuals can break free from these constraints, achieving the freedom to pursue the growth they crave. Their journey reminds us of the importance of intellectual autonomy, the ability to think freely without societal restrictions. 6. The ultimate question. At the heart of Schopenhauer's philosophy lies a profound question. Is social life truly necessary for happiness and personal growth? Or does it merely distract the intellectual? For many, a fulfilling life is tied to social connections, family bonds, and a sense of belonging. These relationships are seen as essential for emotional well-being, providing comfort, joy, and validation through shared experiences. As social creatures, humans find purpose in connecting with others, learning from them, and engaging in collective experiences. However, Schopenhauer challenges this widely accepted notion. For those with an intellectual disposition, social life may not be essential for happiness. In fact, it can become a distraction, pulling individuals away from the intellectual pursuits that bring true fulfillment. The constant need for social engagement can be overwhelming, particularly when conversations revolve around superficial topics rather than deep, thought-provoking discussions. Schopenhauer's critique isn't a rejection of social life altogether, but a challenge to its intrinsic value. Intellectual fulfillment doesn't come from external validation. It comes from the freedom to delve into one's own thoughts and ideas without interruption. The dilemma, then, is whether true fulfillment comes from external connections or the solitary pursuit of knowledge. Intellectuals are caught in a delicate balance. Too much social interaction can drain their energy, leaving little time for deep reflection. Yet, complete solitude can lead to isolation, making them feel disconnected from the community essential for emotional well-being. Schopenhauer's question is whether one can truly thrive without social life, or if it needs to be redefined to fit the intellectual's needs. The challenge, then, is finding a balance, where social engagement enhances one's life rather than distracting from it. Social life is not inherently harmful, but it must align with one's personal goals and values. It's not about rejecting socializing altogether, but about ensuring that interactions serve a higher purpose. But when social life revolves around ego validation or societal expectations, it can become a hindrance. The ultimate question, then, is one of priorities. Does one seek happiness through external validation and socializing? Or does one find fulfillment in the freedom of thought, the pursuit of knowledge, and the exploration of one's inner world? Schopenhauer suggests that, for the intellectual, the latter leads to a more authentic and lasting sense of happiness and growth, rooted not in external approval, but in the internal journey of self-exploration. Quality over quantity in social connections. Schopenhauer does not advocate for complete isolation. Instead, he suggests that individuals should seek relationships that nourish the mind, challenge their thinking, and align with their personal journey of growth. Social interactions should not be an end in themselves, but a means to further intellectual development. It is the quality, not the quantity, of relationships that matters. Meaningful connections that foster critical thinking and intellectual exploration become the most valuable. This pursuit of intellectual and personal growth leads to a richer, more meaningful existence, transcending the fleeting pleasures of social life and anchored in enduring satisfaction. 8. Conclusion. In exploring Schopenhauer's views on solitude and intellectual engagement, we challenge the conventional perception of being alone. Too often, solitude is seen as loneliness or disconnection. Yet, Schopenhauer offers a fresh perspective. Solitude is essential for intellectual and personal growth. Solitude isn't the absence of connection, but the presence of one's own thoughts, a space where the mind can flourish without distraction. Yet, Schopenhauer wasn't advocating for complete withdrawal. He recognized the value of meaningful social connections for intellectual and emotional growth. For those on a path of personal growth, meaningful interactions should transcend small talk. These interactions should offer opportunities to engage deeply with others, challenge ideas, and explore new intellectual horizons. The intellectual doesn't need to abandon social life, but should approach it with intention and discernment. For the intellectual, it's not about choosing between socializing and solitude, but finding a balance that promotes personal growth. The balance between solitude and meaningful social engagement is central to Schopenhauer's philosophy of a fulfilling life. When social life is intentional, it offers opportunities to exchange ideas and push one's thinking further. By balancing these elements, intellectuals can create a life that nurtures curiosity and fosters both personal and intellectual growth. Ultimately, the goal is to achieve self-actualization, where solitude and social engagement complement one another, leading to a life of purpose and intellectual fulfillment. Schopenhauer teaches us that fulfillment doesn't lie in the quantity of social interactions, nor in solitude alone. The greatest sense of meaning comes from balancing both. Solitude provides the space for self-reflection and intellectual exploration, while meaningful social connections broaden our perspectives. Understanding this dynamic, we can appreciate the value of both, recognizing that the pursuit of intellectual growth and self-expression is a deeply rewarding journey.